can't believe those guys. It's like they've never seen a skeleton before. Jesus!
Well, hey there, Skelly. I'm Slime from the highly lucrative series Dragon Quest, and I've got a bone to pick with you.
Oh, you think you're real funny, huh?
Not as funny as you giving up on the series you said you were gonna finish.
Hey, I didn't give up, alright? You try farming King Cure slimes for an hour and a half. I just needed a break.
I'm gonna give all your stuff a break if you don't get back to it.
Do you have any idea how expensive those games are? Alright, fine, I'll do it. Just get out of my chair. You're getting secretions all over it. Oh god, it's sticky! Imagine you're the chosen hero of legend, destined to save the land from the evil Magnus Catastrophus or whatever. You grab your cypress stick, snatch a pot lid from your mom's kitchen, and bid farewell to your hometown. You step out into the open field, and... something's missing here. If Wreck-It Ralph taught us anything, it's that a hero is only as good as the enemies they've bested along the way. How are you supposed to get strong enough to save the world without first being nibbled by rats, accosted by Zubats, and slimed by slimes? Monsters are important, so after the positive reception of Dragon Quest V and its monster scouting mechanic, not to mention the monster madness that was Pokemania at the time, the trifecta of legendary heroes combined their powers with Tosei and released Dragon Quest Monsters in 1998, known in the States as Dragon Warrior Monsters after being co-published with Eidos and released in the year 2000. It was also the first Dragon Quest game to be released in Europe. It's not a bad start, but man, imagine getting the spin-off series first. And I thought we Americans had it bad with getting these games in English. If you know anything about Tosei, then congratulations, you are a true gamer. Despite porting and developing hundreds of games from Yoshi's Cookie to Resident Evil Zero to The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge, they have always maintained a policy of not having any creative input on the games they make. They refuse to even be credited, leading to their reputation as a ghost developer. It seems one of the few series they're okay with being credited with is Densetsu no Staffy. Yeah, that's right, I said Staffy, not Starfy. Get it right. They even made my favorite version of the first DQ on Game Boy Color. Massive respect, Tosei. You a real one for real. Straight bussin'. As is often the case with this franchise, I was spoiled for choice on which version to play. There's the Game Boy Color original with its English box art that I don't think did it any favors on store shelves. Series fans have been quoted as saying, "It hurts my soul," and looks like the box art for Sim Theme Park. How you gonna put monsters on the cover art and not include a slime? At least Japan got that part right. Wait, oh, you gotta be kidding me. He forgot the color of slimes again. Hey, this is a little last-minute addition I had to make, because I ordered this 30th anniversary art book, and, yeah, I'm starting to think Toriyama just did this sometimes as a goof. 4 years later, both Monsters 1 and 2 were remade and bundled into a pretty sweet package on the PS1. I didn't play it, but after seeing this incredibly well-detailed rendition of Great Tree, kinda wish I had. It's a real shame it was only in Japan, but this is Dragon Quest. We have fan translators to fix that. I like the box art. That Wadabo is a cute little bugger. And there's my boy Golem, just chilling to the max after a long day of Belmont strutting. A decade later, Tosei returned to the original game once again with yet another remake. Terry's Wonderland 3D is a top-to-bottom reimagining on the 3DS, with so many changes that it's basically a whole new game. And if you didn't guess already, only in Japan. I did not expect to stick with this game all the way through. I figured I'd record a few hours for the vid and that'd be it. And then before I knew it, 25 hours had passed and... what just happened? Let's start on that little handheld I love so dearly, the Game Boy Color.
Get into it.
We open on the humble home of youngsters Terry and, oh, that name is such a pain in the ass. Millie it is, gallivanting around in youthful revelry instead of trying to escape from this nightmare they found themselves in. Because apparently, this house has no exit. Dragon Warrior Monsters: The Room. Stay up too late and you will be carried away by monsters. Oh, that must be what happened to the princess in the first game. Well, carried away by monsters is exactly what happens. The nasty little dude Warubo assaults Terry and abducts his sister by dragging her to the kingdom of Greatlog through a dresser drawer, just like in Drag Me to Hell. But then the good-natured Wadabo appears, who in a nice little subversion of expectations is also looking for your sister. But he ends up settling for Terry, enticing him with the chance to find a sister and a vague comment on being a master. Not a scout, a master. It was a monster-raising game in the middle of Pokemon's heyday. Of course they went with master. Terry shoots, makes a perfect three-pointer, and finds himself in the kingdom of Great Tree, one of the most charming locales I've seen on the Game Boy Color. DQ settings have always been your typical medieval fare, castles, villages, casinos. The gameplay loop in Monsters required a hub area to serve as a home base, and a giant tree with all kinds of rooms and secrets and events to discover was a stroke of inspirational genius. For example, if you explore some of the farm and stand underneath this flying dragon, this happens. Okay, I know this was before the current naming convention for spells, but did you really have to go with thwack for getting clocked by a falling egg? I'll eat my own femur if this setting didn't come from a childhood fascination with tree houses. Because after all, what kid doesn't love a tree house? The little animated wisps of cloud really add that extra touch. As you progress and grow stronger, the tree grows right along with you, revealing new pathways and new NPCs. The music even has its own unique feel that sets it apart from the main series. It's still recognizable as Sugiyama's work, but it has this air of whimsy and childlike wonderment. It's like looking through the eyes of a child in a world that's both exciting and comforting at the same time. I can tell Sugiyama approached this soundtrack with a very different mindset. It's too bad any sane person won't be listening to it very much, but we'll get to that later. The refreshingly chill King of Great Tree gives us our quest. Represent his kingdom and win the Starry Night tournament, and our wish to find Millie will be granted. All we need is a selection of 3 strong monsters to get us started. Oh, this is gonna be a long journey.
Hey, we slimes are pretty tough,
Are you tougher than Gun?
Sorry.
Now, I use the word journey, but that's not very accurate. Pokemon's a journey. Dragon Quest is a journey. Journey is a journey. Monsters is more like a very trimmed down roguelite, like Cave Noir or even Torneco's Mystery Dungeon, with portals that lead to these so-called mystic worlds scattered around Great Tree. Search each floor for items, fights, and NPCs until you're ready to plunge yourself into the dank, dark hole of mystery and proceed to the next floor. Horrible life advice, I know. Items have special importance since selling them is the only way to add coin to your coffers. Limited inventory space meant I was stopping to toss items more often than I liked. It doesn't help that there are essential items like the Beast Tail and Warp Wing always taking up space. The plus side is you don't have to spend money very often. I was usually pretty well off, especially since I always traveled with a support monster for essential utility and healing spells. Hell, you can even find stat boosting seeds right out there in the open. No pot destruction or larceny required.
Hey!
While Great Tree is a fantastic area to explore, the Mystic World is, well, it's just not very stimulating. Aside from NPC battles and high-value items scattered about, there isn't much here to spark that spirit of exploration. Holes will sometimes drop you into special floors, like a shop, a healer, or even a coliseum that gives you the choice to keep fighting for more rewards. Sometimes you'll even get an adorable little forest maze or a moving tile puzzle straight out of Pokemon, but solve them once and you're pretty much set for the rest of the game. Far be it from me to argue the appeal of forest mazes, but would it have killed them to add a few different layouts? It comes off as lazy, or at the very least a lack of inspiration. The Mystic World is vaguely treated as its own dimension where you could wind up just about anywhere. For a setting with potentially limitless applications, I sure spent a lot of time navigating the same blocky layouts. Hell, at least have a fishing minigame. Easiest way to add an extra point to review scores. It's like petting the dog in games today. But that's not what you're here for. You're here for that intense monster-themed combat! This kind of game is all about freedom of expression. Truly the best way for my generation to express themselves was with their choice of monsters in games like Pokemon, Digimon, Jade Cocoon if they were hipsters, Monster Rancher if they were really freaking weird. Hell, you could probably form a psychological profile based on a monster roster. A skeleton, a bag of jewelry, and a slime with a flower on its head. Well, this guy's clearly a sexual tyrannosaur. I was afraid the 4-character limit for names was gonna be an annoying limitation, but they say limitation breeds creativity. We've got Mook, the chocolate chip king slime, Turt, who's always turtin' for a squirtin', Kabush, Robo, Morb, Gash, and Mr. B, the Bean Man, precursor to Cruel Cumber. I can't tell if Toriyama always ate his vegetables or they were literal monsters to him. What was simultaneously my favorite and most irritating feature of DQ5 was getting to add monsters to your party. Slay your quarry, and if you're lucky, they'll get back up and ask to join you. The irritation came from having no means of increasing those chances. You want a King Cure Slime? Then you'd better be ready to grind for needless hours. Now, if it had turned out that DQ Monsters had the same system, I would have thrown my hands up and said, screw this. Screw this! But it's okay, guys. Scouting is no longer 10 out of 10 levels of frustrating and tedious. It's now only like 9 out of 10. Sure, you'll get a freebie every once in a while, but if you really want to win a monster over, then you'd better be packing
copious meats.
Beef jerky and pork chops are cheap, plentiful, and more than enough for your low-level jabronis. But for those elusive high-level baddies, you'll need the peak of monster cuisine, the coveted sirloin. This slab of goodness from places unknown is 40 times as effective as jerky and is the quickest way to make a monster your friend. Hell, buy me a sirloin and I'll be your friend. However, there are some serious problems with this system. This game is designed around monsters acting on their own. You can issue orders outside of tournaments provided a monster's wildness stat is low enough, but you can't issue orders to defend and use an item on the same turn. Meaning if you return to lower level zones with your more powerful team, they're likely gonna one-shot the monster you want without giving you time to use multiple meats. You could go in with a weaker group, but that's a tedious workaround for a short-sighted design flaw. Not to mention it's likely gonna get you killed. There really ought to be a sit the f down or I'm teaching you kamikaze option. Even worse, there's no way to see a monster's gender in battle. You'll use up a bunch of meat, the monster will get up after the fight, and guess what? You wasted your meat on the wrong gender. Why yes, it does get worse. I decided I wanted a Skullgone, which involves breeding duplicate monsters a few times. Because Yuji Horí's game design philosophy always involves just a little sprinkle of testicular torsion, trying to scout a monster you already have cuts the chances they'll join you in half. That doesn't make any sense. If anything, they should be even more inclined to join me.
Damn, that's some bullshit.
Right? When I finally got Skullgone after my long hike through the woods of Tedium, I guess at the very least I felt like I earned it. This dude is sick, and having him follow you around is a much appreciated detail. Otherwise, you'd only see your monsters on the menu screen. These are some radical dudes with some radical abilities. Except Kite Duck. That is the worst thing I have ever seen. To quote a buddy, you can pick your favorite monster and make them a god, and it's all thanks to stats and abilities being passed down through breeding. I was able to breed Skullgone with other strong monsters and really crank up his stats. I guess because he had the dominant genes or something. You can learn up to 8 abilities, unlike those lobotomite Pokemans that can barely keep 4 moves in their noggins. Some abilities will even evolve into stronger versions as you reach stat thresholds. Blaze becomes Blaze More, and finally Blaze Most. Yeah, this was before the modern naming convention of using onomatopoeia. I was even able to breed with a Float-O-Copier and learn Transform, which I tried on a boss and whoa!
I have so much power!
The possibilities with breeding and the unexpected monsters you can end up with are what really give this game an edge over Pokemon. You can even bless eggs to get the gender you want, and since the parent monsters peace out forever after breeding, yeah, I'm very appreciative for that. Mighty Christ-like of you, Horii-san. Slimes do not play fair. They sometimes earn massive stat boosts when leveling up, leading to Mook, the model slime, having the highest stats and HP out of the group. He even beat out Skullgone, who, as an undead, his only racial benefit was high HP. If slimes represent one thing, it's the potential for growth. I guess in some small way, we all have a little slime inside of us.
Are you coming on to me?
I'm sure you've noticed that I've made no effort to hide sped-up gameplay footage. There are a ton of old games, mostly turn-based RPGs, that were great for their time, but require about as much player engagement as riding the bus. Don't look at fast-forwarding and save states as cheating. You should be able to decide what's compelling gameplay and what needs skipping through. Doubling the speed made traversing the Mystic World feel just right, so long as you always have Step Guard active for damaging ground. Monsters will fight on their own anyway, so might as well speed through battles as well. I barely ever needed save states, but when it came to winning rock, paper, scissors 5 times in a row, I would rather chew toenails than sit through that legit.
But Skelly, you're missing out on Sugiyama's excellent composition.
What, you mean the same 5 tracks over and over? Terry's World is a great track, but I don't want to listen to it for 23 hours, 39 if I hadn't been fast forwarding. Yeah, I was playing a Staffy game, what of it? Anybody's gonna be sick to death of Never-Ending Journey, the track that plays for the first half of every Mystic World excursion. A few times I unmuted the game to see if it was still playing, and yeah, it was. It's downright comical how overused this track is. You'll get some different tracks when you reach deeper floors, but they're still just reused from old DQ games. And I thought the soundtrack from DQ Heroes 2 was thrifty. The English translation does its job for the most part, but there are some lines that harken back to that NES era of just what the hell were they smoking? That is not how Paralyze works, not even a little bit. Masters from afar are waiting. What the heck is an onigiri? Why can't you just say rice balls? Oh, you mean jelly donuts?
These donuts are great. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
When I was halfway through the game, my buddy asked me what I thought of it, and in a tone that likely came off as dismissive, I called it a grinding game. Now make no mistake, Monsters is absolutely a grinding game, but there's still this aura of charm surrounding it. I'm glad I got to experience it, albeit in an abridged form. After the credits rolled, I was surprised to find I was kinda hungry for more. I wanted to see what more this series could do, and that's when I started up Terry's Wonderland 3D for the 3DS. One of the scariest games I've ever played. Jesus Christ! Bad touch! Bad touch! I need an adult! Oh, shit. Final Fantasy VII Remake is no replacement for the original. Neither is RE4 Remake, but that's debatable. Terry's Wonderland 3D? Well, that's a tough one. At first glance, these wide open areas in the Mystic World might be seen as a big improvement, but really they're just as bland. Perhaps even more so, depending on which aesthetic you prefer. Even cranking up the resolution didn't help. Some areas are just a whole lot of nothing. With the exception of Hell, a place that really needed its own appropriate music, but the soundtrack has barely been expanded, but there is a track from Torneco's Mystery Dungeon, and I always appreciate some Torneco representation. The 4-character limit is gone, but because this is a fan translation, every monster's English name was condensed down to just a couple letters. I started running out of names pretty quick. You remember how Pokemon fans used to beg Game Freak to bring back monsters following you around? Well, now I know how those guys feel. Getting to march with your crew is one of the best ways to make them feel like they're actually there and not just combat assets that blink into existence when needed. Hell, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth understood that, and I hate that game. I get that with the new camera angle, you'd barely see them, or bigger monsters would even block your vision, but I think Egoraptor said it best.
But if it doesn't work in 3D, you change it.
Just assign a point monster that wanders around and digs up items or scares off enemies, or makes you stealthy so that you can sneak up on baddies, or speeds you up. Hell, they could do all kinds of stuff. And besides that, there are some other ways this game just feels kinda cheap and thrifty. Sure, I'll start with the incredibly petty stuff. Terry doesn't have any animations for rock, paper, scissors. He just stands there in pant-shitting terror in front of the giant hell hand from hell. Using zoom indoors doesn't crack your skull the way it's supposed to. Come on guys, even DQ Heroes 2 got that right. And the Mystic World? Yeah, talk about uninspired. I can understand on the Game Boy Color. The hardware was limiting and it was their first time. Now, 3D, 15 years of experience, barely any new ideas? This does not compute. How about a floor where a couple of rare monsters are fighting over territory and you can pick which one to assist and gain as a party member? Or a bunch of demons are performing a ritual to summon a strong monster by sacrificing a bunch of mini-medals. These aren't complicated interactions. I'm not asking for an Ape Escape minigame where you chase down slimes with a net, though I would really like that. Just neat little events to stumble across and invoke some kind of thought process other than hoofing it through boring areas. Even the special floors and encounters that return from the first game barely ever show up. 14 hours in and I had only found one scout battle and one shop floor. What does this game find so compelling about trudging through the same floors over and over? There are optional boss monsters, but they rarely show up too, like Bjorn the Behemouse, who made me run for my life.
There you go, Tear. Put it in reverse, Tear.
Some monsters will interact with each other in the field, and there's the Well-Wisher who behaves like a mimic. This guy's great. The new Mystic World isn't entirely without newness, but it could have done so much more. Well, at least a bunny girl gives you a naughty magazine and a puff puff. Problematic! The hell was that? Over 600 monsters now inhabit the land, and with so many baddies, there were bound to be some dorks. Quite a few dorks, actually. And hey, I get it. You squeezed Toriyama for almost 40 years, and he's bound to pump out a few stinkers. But it's not just silly designs. Monsters that I thought were so cool in sprite form look like total goobers in 3D. What did you do to my Skullgon? Meanwhile, I've got Rabbit Slime over here towering over the rest of my party. That size was not properly conveyed in the first game. I have this radical bearded undead pirate and his casting animation looks like me at the rave. Like, what the hell is this? I'm just griping at this point. Trust me, I actually really enjoyed Terry's Wonderland 3D. You can turn off skills that you don't want a monster to use, you can use an item and issue orders on the same turn, scouting is now much easier and consistent, breeding is more complex and has way more variety. There's even an item you can equip to a monster if you want to keep that form after breeding. There are passive skills now, and plenty of them, but I could never figure out how to look them up in-game and actually read what they do. There's also a pretty substantial post-game with an all-new story, but I get the feeling it's for the players that really understand the ins and outs of breeding. Ins and outs of breeding. My crew of edgelords finished the last tournament battle with relative ease, but I got my world rocked in the post-game. There's a special kind of frustration that comes with getting body slammed by a liquid metal king slime and then having it run away. Monsters. We call them bad guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad guys. It's their job to give us something to do on our way to becoming legends. It's a thankless job, but an important one. So back in 1986, when Yuji Horii approached Akira Toriyama and asked him to design some monsters for their new game, I'm really glad he said yes. May you rest in peace, Toriyama-san, and thank you for your hard work. And thank you for watching.
Please leave a like if you like our style, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, now what do you mean we?
Well, I figured we could be partners. What? No. Ah!